Welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast, where we embrace our needs as moms, we learn to lead ourselves first, then our families, and where we create our own healing from the inside out to find our way to the work we were meant to do in this world. I'm your host, a fellow mom of 3 and a certified life coach, Lizzie Langston. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. So this is the last episode of the year 2020. And I don't know about you, but this year I've definitely been like, get me out of here. Bring on 2021. And I was chatting with my coach, one of my coaches. I have a couple for different things, but I was chatting with her and just listening to her talking about how she's ending her year. And it was supremely inspiring to me. I wanted to offer it to you, which is going into 2021 with a mountain of accomplishments piled up from 2020. Let me explain to you what I mean. It can be easy to look back at this year and think about all that we didn't do, that we wanted to do, all that we had planned to do, that we didn't get to do, or that wasn't allowed to be done, frankly. And so how is that going to feel going into 2021? Well, we're going to feel kind of graspy and like it's going to be a makeup year and like it's really important now to do those things that we didn't do last year. And there can just be that graspy lack and scarcity. Or maybe we will continue to just feel kind of bummed and disappointed, especially if quarantine continues, right? And that's a very much a possibility, at least here in Colorado. Definitely. And so this is something that we might have to have some strategy about. So I'm going to set you up really nicely for 2021. And as I share my example of my list of my pile of accomplishments, I invite you at the end of this podcast to make your own list. All right, this should be fun. I'm going to be sharing both motherhood stuff and business stuff. So the beginning of this year, January, was my introduction to homeschooling. And no, it wasn't actually because of the pandemic, right? January, that hadn't happened yet. I felt prompted through the Spirit to pull Jensen out of school. He was the only one that was in school, my oldest, in December of 2019. So we kind of got a leg up on the whole homeschool scene, and that wasn't easy. It's not like it was easier. It just so happens that I did it in January. I hired a homeschool coach temporarily, and then once our coaching was over, I joined her membership program, so I still have access to her to brush up on things. And I learned how to live with overwhelm. So that was kind of my big thing. Overwhelm before January was something that just felt like a showstopper. If I felt overwhelmed, I just didn't do it. I kind of circled an indecision, and occasionally I still get there, but overwhelm is no longer one of those emotions that feels like it runs the show. So I'm grateful to my past self for that. And that was definitely an accomplishment. I really would love to know what your accomplishment list is. So if you end up sharing it on social media at all, please tag me, just Lizzie Langston on Instagram, or I'm the postpartum coach, or just Lizzie Jensen Langston on Facebook. I'd love to kind of see what your pile of accomplishments is. Another accomplishment is that in January and February, I trudged through the snow in the evenings. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 times a week. And I took my oldest child to swim lessons, indoor swim lessons at the rec center. It was winter, and sometimes it was a bit sketchy driving down there, and we were usually late. And it took us just as long to get bundled up and get in the car and get there as it did to actually do the lesson, maybe even longer. Not to mention prepping, him with dinner so he wasn't hungry during his lesson, etc. And I did that because I just wanted to. And because he wanted to do lessons and I wanted him to do lessons. And that was dedication. I'm going to go ahead and pat myself on the back for that one. That was definitely a personal accomplishment. Something else that feels like an accomplishment is I increased my revenue in my business by 281% this year. So I more than doubled, and that it sounds so fun and lovely, but it was actually a lot of work to receive that. And so although the money is exciting, I think what was really amazing is the way that I changed my relationship with receiving in general. I don't know if you listened to last week's episode on giving and receiving, but it was not easy. And it's to receive, to just allow myself to have the money and not spend it, to have the money and not feel guilty about it, to have the money and just let it be with me, to be with money, more money than I've ever created on my own before. So I thought that was really interesting. And oddly enough, that is what I feel really accomplished about, is how much I was able to receive and work with the Lord. I even studied in the scriptures receiving and tried to figure out, why is it, like, what role does receiving play? And so that was an accomplishment for me this year. Another thing I did this year, just for fun, honestly, was I paid a bunch of money to have a website built. I don't know if you've been to my website. It's just LizzieLangston.com. I had so much fun thinking about the work I'm doing in the world, who I have the privilege of talking to in my audience, and which women I help and how I help them. And I absolutely love how the website turned out. So that was another fun accomplishment this year. I hired house cleaners this year, and previously I've hired house cleaners here and there, but I've always just had this icky guilt and just had this weird relationship with them anytime I hired them. I think it's because hiring house cleaners was not yet into my self-concept, and I really associated hiring, like having a house cleaner, as just something I didn't do, something unreachable. I just made it up to be all these things in my mind. And then I just decided, you know what? I'm a grown woman. I make my own money, and this is how I choose to spend it. And I just got really easy about it. And now I love it. Never going back. Gotta say. I hired a coach specifically to work on my sex life and my sexual pleasure and releasing shame around sex and having more desire. And that has been such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful part of my work this year. Her name is Danielle Savory, by the way. I think she's on Instagram as Danielle Savory Coaching, just DANIELLE. So check her out. I love her to pieces. I did her It's Better Sex in 90 Days group course, and then I hired her for one-on-one after that. I was just smitten. And I've loved doing that work, and I cannot believe how much exploring my body and my thoughts around desire and receiving and giving and all of that has impacted my business, has helped me love my body and really be in my body and live in my body and just own my desire for pleasure in all areas. And I'm so grateful to Danielle Savory for that. And it's been definitely an accomplishment of 2020, the progress I've made there. Another thing that was hard this year is when I really decided to grow my business, there were a couple other things that I was dabbling in as far as little side jobs and MLM thingies. And I loved them dearly, but I just kind of had to grow up and be like, hey, I'm constraining my focus and I'm just doing one thing and I'm going to do it well. And then I can maybe readdress those later. And that was not easy for me, especially in social selling situations. There's teammates and friends, and it can be really hard to leave. But I'm really proud of how I put my business first, and I was only able to do that because of my belief in myself. I also, with that, I had to change my entire self-concept. Up until this year, I had been the person who could do anything really well, but never really stuck with it to become expert and scale, and grow that exponentially. And so because I can do very many things quite effortlessly. I mean, there's some things I straight up suck at, like golf. I just can't golf, but there's a lot of things that I can do. I could do. A lot of us, so many of us could do so many things. And there was a lot of power in making the choice to constrain and just focus on helping postpartum moms with the things that I help them with. And that felt really, really, really empowering in the end. It was kind of miserable at first because I had to say goodbye to some things and stop doing some things that I had really loved, but it's been such a blessing, and it's more valuable to the world, and in turn has brought more value into me and my life and my family. Next accomplishment that I totally did not anticipate, although it was on my bucket list, I wanted to do it at some point, is providing full-time for my family. And I've talked about this before, but my husband has two forms of income, or he had two forms of income, a part-time engineering job. He's a mechanical engineer in the aerospace industry, and it was an awesome job. And he had gone from full-time to part-time so that he could start his second form of income, which is his business. And it's a co-working space. He's got 2 locations here in Denver. It's called Goose Tail Spaces. You can go check it out online. But anyway, Goosetail took a big hit with all of the shutdowns, right? People cannot come and work in our co-working space because of COVID restrictions. And then also his part-time engineering job had to cut way back, and the first people to go obviously were the part-time people. So with that, in June, I officially was creating most of the income for our family, and that was a lot of emotions for me. It was a lot on my body. I had no idea. I mean, I do have an idea, but I saw and learned firsthand how very much your emotions affect your physical health. And that leads me to another accomplishment, which is that for the first time this year, I hired a massage therapist and I work with her regularly. And she has really, really, really helped express a lot of the emotions that I felt kind of in survival mode through that transition that was completely new for me. After a couple months of that, I could tell my body was just screaming at me. I had chronic back pain. I had a lot of shoulder pain. I would get headaches, and it was just tricky. It was so tricky to be in my body, and it wasn't feeling like me and how I normally feel. And through this work with this amazing massage therapist, she's here in the Denver area. If you'd like to know her name, just reach out to me. But through working with her, it's been so releasing. And it's actually been a catalyst into me exploring with my clients the relationship between the body and our emotional state, and has been one of the reasons that I've been so able to help a couple different clients heal from physical chronic pain related to their birth trauma. An accomplishment that I absolutely love this year that I didn't actually see until I sat down to really look for accomplishments is this year I have fallen in love with my husband. And I already was in love with him, but I also kind of was in love with this list of things that I thought he should be and do. And so I loved him, but I also loved my list. And to the extent that I've let go of some of those expectations that I really held on to for some years, I have fallen even more deeply in love with him, and I am so content with him, and I just am in awe of the person that he is. Are there still days and moments where my brain wants to nitpick? Totally. But in a huge way, I've just let go and decided that I was wrong. I'll give you one example. One of them was like spirituality. I was like, no, he needs to be like this. He needs to do this. And he's actually a very spiritual person. It's not like he wasn't spiritual, but I had in my mind, I want him to do this and this and this. And what I realized after a while is I actually do those things really well. Why would I take away from the love that I can feel towards him by holding on to these expectations when I actually execute those aspects in our family really, really well? And so as I let go of that, I claimed what I was good at, and I was able to just let him be him and love him. And it felt so, so, so amazing. Another accomplishment is I read 3 out of the 4 book series, the Books of Bayern by Shannon Hale. Shannon Hale, ever since I read The Goose Girl by Shannon Hale, I fell in love with her way of describing things. It just resonates with my soul. And so I read The Goose Girl again this year. This is all on Audible, of course. I mean, that's just what works for me. So I read The Goose Girl, and then I read Enna Burning, and then I read River Secrets, and now I'm just starting Forest Born. And as we travel to Utah, I'm going to be reading it. So that was a fun accomplishment that I, again, didn't really look at until I sat down and tried to think about all that I'd done this year. I invested really big in my business this year, and I borrowed money to do that, and I'm really proud of it. I have already more than doubled the amount that I invested, and it was really scary for me to do that and kind of humbling. I had to face a lot of my money beliefs, but I was just all in and really committed to the value of my brain and really squeezing that value out in the form of dollars in the world. I knew I could do it. I knew that I was the full package to help mamas, and it's been beautiful to watch my gifts be of such use in other people's lives. Okay, my friends, that about wraps it up. There's probably a lot more, but for now, that's it. I want you to think about your list of accomplishments. And if it helps you, you can break it into categories like I did spiritually. I guess another one is I read the Book of Mormon this year from top to bottom all the way through. So what is something that you want to celebrate, and what would your pile of accomplishments look like? as I go into 2021, the way that I feel like this impacts me is that no matter what, kind of what I've learned, I guess, is no matter what the world brings and does and whatever's happening out in the world, I am not stoppable. Like nothing can actually stop me, even if I have to change plans and pivot, right? Even if we are having to change plans and pivot, I'm not stoppable. And I hope that as you create your pile of accomplishments, it really helps you see that as well. Again, I'd love to know what you're learning from looking back at your year. So DM me or share it on Instagram and tag me at Lizzie Langston or on Facebook. And have a beautiful new year. And I'll see you in 2021 right here on the podcast. Hey, Lizzie here. I've helped dozens of postpartum moms just like you to manage their postpartum anxiety and deconstruct their postpartum depression. It's really easy for me. So if you're ready to feel better, I know the way. Let's chat on the phone. Set up a time by going to LizzieLangston.com/consult. It's pretty simple, and I will be calling you soon.